Шановні
Dear colleagues, Ukrainian Media Center of Reforms dedicates this briefing to dynamics in tax reform and dynamics. We have Deputy Minister of Finances of Ukraine, Olena Makeyeva. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Happy to see you. We'll discuss results of industrial platforms because, as you know, the Ministry of Finances suggested a communication policy. And as a part of this communication policy of Ministry of Finances, we suggested to business, to professional organizations, different experts, to discuss future tax reforms on industrial platforms and also on open platforms. Industrial platforms were conducted during 3 months. In every industry, we spoke about problems they're facing and that hold back the development of those industries. On open platforms, we met with tax experts and who suggested the future tax models, and we had discussions, and sometimes we had arguments what kind of tax we should have. We're trying to find a compromise. I made calculations on the budget of our country, and we're trying to find something in common. Today we make a presentation of results of the work of summaries of industrial tax platforms. You have a presentation. We'll speak about what we achieved, and also I would like to mention that a communication policy of the Ministry of Finances, Industrial and Open Platforms were held in the framework of our team at the National Council of Reforms by the President of Ukraine. It is called our team Tax Reform. And at the meeting of the industrial platform, there were always representatives of our team, and they participated in the discussion. After that, we will speak about those tax innovations and draft laws that were approved in the Parliament, and they're waiting for the signature of the President. And all that was approved in the first reading. We'll discuss those legislative initiatives and those tax changes, and I will make announcement of the first steps done by the Ministry of Finances in order to resolve the problem of overpayment of the tax for income. So, results and summaries of industrial platforms. The goal of the industrial communication platforms determined by the way of industrial platforms and with the participation of members of that participate in tax reform in order to study problems in different industries of different sectors of economy and in the field of taxation, and to develop priorities for future tax reforms. And there were experts who told us. We started to discuss reforms, future reforms, but it's not clear. Priorities of reforms are not clear. It seems to me that it was always like that. A working group decided on priorities to change tax legislation, and then they brought to those results to professional community. We used a different approach to hold industrial platforms first, and then on and then to decide what are the priorities for business, for the industry, what they see, what is the challenge, and on what our team tax reform should focus on. So we started from expectations of the business, and I hope that our strategy is correct, and all representatives of the industry will be happy to see those results which we discussed every time when we had a meeting. So for us, we had some tasks, and the tasks for industrial communication platforms. And first of all, as I mentioned, to get from business the part of separate industries, that problems and those challenges they're facing, and that are on the way of development of business, and that something we should change in the legislation for the business to develop. Second task was for us is to provide broad dialogue with the public in order to find efficient ideas for reforms. And the third task to build a dialogue between business and members of the group, because we understand that the focus group of tax reform, though it is balances interests of the government and parliament and business through profile associations, professional associations, but at the same time 20 people is not enough to understand what kind of priorities we should have, and that's why we plan to involve as many as possible experts to discuss, to have a discussion, to build a constant dialogue between focus and between tax reform and group and representatives of industries. And one more task is what are the priorities of tax reform seen by business. Not our team or the government or Ministry of Finances. As a result of those 3 months, I can tell you that we had 16 industrial platforms. So we met with representatives of 16 industries, sectors of economy, and we identified key priorities for tax reform. As a result, we built a communication. 3-4 times we met with different sectors, and they had discussed problems we have and what is an obstacle for the development of business. We set up a working group to develop proposals how to resolve those problems. As you see on the slide on your presentation, a lot of professional organizations and groups participated in organizing these meetings as a part of industrial communication platforms. And thank you very much. I would like to thank European Business, American Chamber of Commerce, mentioned package of reforms, New Country Association, Ukraine Pile, Deloitte, from Association of Retailers, so Ukraine, IT Ukraine, and others. Organizations that were active in organizing our industrial communication platforms. So we held 16 agrarian, alcohol, biofuel, light industry, e-commerce, fund markets, and game market, hotel, IT, mining, oil processing, pharmaceuticals, restaurant business, retail, tobacco, and banking. And then on each slide, on the side, you can see what problems they are facing. Of course, there are some priorities and there are problems, common problems. We're trying to summarize. In every sector, they have specific issues and specific problems that are only for that industry, but also there are some general problems. So you can see the presentation, and it will be placed on the website of Reforms in UAE, National Council of Reforms, and on the website of the Ministry of Finances. And I would like to add that after every meeting with sector of economy, we together developed a press release on those problems we discussed during our meetings, and now it is summarized in our presentation. So if to take for the base that 16 sectors, that 100 of our economy of the country, then we can single out priorities, problems for that are common. On the slide you see common sectoral problems. For example, the first problem, which almost all have, that 87% of representatives, almost all of them, they told what is an obstacle, that instability of tax legislation, all the changes, and so there's no chance for long-term planning. The second problem, high taxes on salary fund, because in Ukraine it's more than 50%, and that is higher than in European countries. Problem 3, they mentioned very high part of shadow business, shadow economy. Next common problem is a big part of smuggled products on the market, and uneven tax on business. Some business pays more, some less. So tax system is not fair to all taxpayers. Also, representatives of industries, they mentioned that there is a problem of non-payment of VAT and no long-term predictable excise policy, and also additional import fees. So when we have 8 common problems that for 16 industries and with which we had platforms, and we can say that among these problems we can speak about, we can develop our future priorities. What is expected by business from us? What is an obstacle for them to develop? And what are the priorities we should have from when we model new tax system? So common problems on the slide, and we have them, and also priorities for reforms. A common problem of the industry, shadow economy, according to the data of the Ministry of Economy, shadow economy in Ukraine is 42%. As a result of 16 these roundtables, we can say that in some industries there is more than 42% in retail. 60% of shadow is done in shadow. Pharmaceutical market 40%. Light industry 67%. That's impressive. That's why, as a priority of reforms, we suggest to create motivations for gradual taking off from shadow. We should develop such motivations which will become popular to pay attention, and it will be risky to work in shadow. Next common problem is uneven tax for business. So a priority here of the reform should be equal conditions of taxation and improvement of a simplified system of taxation and reporting an account. And our goal should be to have fair, even conditions for all industries. And every industry would wants to have some tax benefits, but we understand that if we give tax benefits to one sector, we should give fairly to others, and that will be fairness and just. That's why they speak about unjust taxes for business. Next, common business and a high tax for salary fund. It's clear that our priority should be to reduce this tax on salaries. And I see representatives of open platforms that participated actively in open platforms, and we discussed that we should reduce tax on the salary tax, and we discussed that it should be we should on income and together with a social fee, or should be separate, but we should reduce tax burden. And communication platforms told us, and that was discussed during open platforms. Next common problem, a big part of counterfeited smuggled products on the market. So the priority is efficient programs to fight smuggling and abuse of tax rules, custom rules. Next, instability of tax legislation, and we will suggest to introduce a moratorium on amendments to tax code changes, and that's it for discussion. We'll continue the discussion, whether it's for a year, moratorium for 2, and how. Absence of long-term predictable excise policy. So the priority of introduction of long-term predictable excise policy and growth of excise fees. You know that excise were raised during the year several times, and they speak about that because that has an influence on sell cost and on the final cost, and a negative influence on money collected to the budget, because we can raise excise but we will lose from other taxes, and all representatives of excise community or excise goods, they told we understand there should be rates should go up, but we need to understand dynamics, at least for 5 years, like it was in European countries. So our goal, and that is a priority, to introduce a long-term predictable excise policy for companies to know in advance when and how the excise will be changed. Additional import fee, they asked about that, and that's a concern. And now additional import fee will be cancelled since January 1st, 2016, like it is provided in the tax code, and in untransparent administration of taxes, and that's why there is no VAT, which is paid back in time. So we should introduce all digital service, automate the process, and to provide perfect payment of VAT, return of VAT, and that's what we are working on. This is a summary as a result of those 16 industrial communication platforms, and I would like to thank civic organizations, NGOs, and professional associations, business and journalists who were present at our meetings for cooperation. Because success of reforms, that's our common business. And the next step will be to make a presentation of results of open platforms. And I would like to tell you that during six open platforms, we received 14 possible tax models, and together with leaders of professional organizations, we'll have a separate meeting, and they will try to find priorities and those possible points for cooperation or for interaction. Thank you very much for your active position. I am very happy that we developed with you priorities for future tax reforms, and today, every industry will be able to look and check, see that all the requests, all the problems that is considered in our presentation. Now I suggest answers questions, and then I would like to announce legislative initiatives that are in the Parliament, and that a novelty that I mentioned as a to overpayment of income tax. Maybe as an organizer, I will ask the first question. Schedule for all those platforms. That's a very good approach to have an inclusive reform, because there are many stakeholders in the project. How it will be implemented in the tax code? What is the calendar? Autumn next year. So what are the landmarks for the Ministry of Finances? Tax reforms are developed and approved by the team tax reform. I told you from the very beginning. And for us to develop the priorities, we developed the communication policy, and we had industrial and open platforms, and we wanted to get those priorities from business, from professional community, and to consider them during reform and model, and all representatives, so all who had a chance from the team, they participated in those meetings. So step to present results of industrial platforms, and next step is to present results of open platforms, and that information then will be presented additionally in the focus team. There will be a group, and They'll discuss taxes and the influence of the budget, because you understand when we have so many different tax models, and I told you that there were 14 of them at open platforms. Coming out of priorities that I read, what are the changes must be a priority to reduce salary tax? It's clear that together with a group of tax reform, will calculate different variants how to reduce salary tax. We make those calculations, the influence on the budget if one social input and the reduction to 20%, and there are some other proposals how to reduce social input down to 20%, but to have progressive scales to calculate input income tax, and all understand that any tax reform must be neutral to the budget. In other words, it should not bring to the losses of the, because disbalancing of the budget will become one more problem, can become one more problem for our country. That's why we hold by every segment we analyze ideas and the ideas on the budget, influence on the budget, and in the Ministry of Finances. Then we present to our group. There are several models, and that's why we have discussions. We're planning to bring to the Parliament new tax code in September, and we expect that it will be approved. And we hope there will be positive results. And none of us, and you, is not sure that at the same time 100% of companies will be ready to get out of the shadow. You show that there is more than 42%. That's why we count on some variants. In case if it doesn't happen at the same time, the shadow economy doesn't go to legal business. If 25% we gets out 50, 70, and 100. So we have to be hyper optimistic to believe that 100% of them get out of the shadow. That's why we will consider different variants, and we have limited time, so be very laconic. Very short. Thank you very much, Taras. He asked my question about the future, so clarify it. Maybe we'll mention this is the united position on the fund of salary payment. And what kind of systems administration are you planning? Because last week they passed the law on reduction of influence on business. There is something to improve, but I wanted to hear from you. Thank you. As to reduction of salary tax, we consider different variants, and as a technical mission OMF, we invited them to model the part of the tax on income tax and for small business, and so consider different variants that were presented as a part of open platforms or industrial platforms. And they gave us proposals, so they sent it to our emails in our communication policy, and then we calculate different variants and the influence, because every model has its advantages and disadvantages. For us to make a balanced decision, we need to hold this analysis and to understand risks we can expect from bringing them together, or if we have a progressive scale. There is no agreed one model. It may happen that we'll consider several options, and as to the final position of the Minister of Finances and the government, we'll know about that later. As to simplified taxation system, we had a separate meeting for representatives of small and medium business, and we had a lot of different ideas how to improve the simplified system of taxation. Some people talked about patent, and that's a European experience, and there are some people thought to reach the number of groups or to raise the tax and We discussed it, analyzed all those thoughts to try to find some joint decision which will meet expectations of the small and medium business and expectation of the government and budget of Ukraine. That's why we consider all proposals we heard during our platforms. And next week we'll discuss the initiative USAID. They hold a roundtable on that issue, so we are still open for the dialogue, As to legislative initiatives, if I may, I will answer that question when I will announce. We discussed now communication platform, then we will speak about legislation. What is with local taxes cancel 5% of wholesale tax? Tax for real estate cancel or payment is the same without expense, and on VAT return. So what can it be? Automatic return for all because there's e-system administration or what? Thank you. As to local taxes, of course, on an industrial platform, we cannot discuss that because we wanted to discuss issues. But we spoke about, they expressed their wish. All sectors that deal with excise goods, they asked to cancel 5% of local tax, and but to have a higher rate of access because then administration and count and will be simpler, but very positive. Very positive effect was locally from introduction of that additional import fee. We'll combine what business wants and what local authorities want because they got additional money to the budget to build roads and to bring new investors through hypermarkets and for new petrol stations, etc. As to property tax or real estate tax, a lot of tax complains that it's not a fair tax, and that's also we'll try to have just tax because there are some cases when they tax cars with the car which is the volume which is 3 liters, but the cost is less than those which have a lesser volume of the engine. So we'll try to consider the experience of our partners or foreign partners and who will share experience of European countries how that well regulated. So we're looking for as to payback of VAT payback, and so that should be paid back without exception. At present, the return is 70% of VAT, and then above countries, their names are on the website. We want to achieve 100% of payback, and it doesn't matter what kind of taxpayer that is, because that's why e-administration of PDV was introduced. I hope that soon it will give results, and next year we can speak about 100% of VAT payback. But to say that we have very high that as well as salary tax, and I would like to thank business that you understand this, because the state cannot return at the same time 20 billion hryvnia or 28 million hryvnia of those which was paid for VAT. What are the plans to correct excise, including taxation? When are you planning to do that? What happens to that draft law, which for 10 billion hryvnia? Thank you for your question. That is provided by the tax code. I mean, correction of excess, but it will have negative influence on business. But at the same time, this is the part of the article of the law. That's why we should take it out from the tax code. Nobody could expect that there would be such events in Ukraine. Thank you. Toronto. From what is the best system? Singapore system of taxation is the best. Did you take it as an example? Thank you very much for your question. Ukraine chose road is of European community, and that's why we took an obligation to bring in accordance to European directives, Ukrainian legislation, and as a landmark, those European directives is a landmark. You know, my brother is in Canada. He came for 3 hours on one day, once a week, and everything was fine. He has a restaurant in Warsaw. You can come on Novohrodska Street, 56, and has a bookkeeper. If you want to move on, don't follow the example of the bureaucrats from. I have to leave. Very sorry. Thank you. We work on how to simplify business and bookkeeping. By the way, which we sent to the committee. We provide that invoice should be the first document, like in Europe, because we like to get rid of those other documents which do not meet world experience. That's why I hope this initiative will be supported in the Parliament of colleagues. About the work of communication platforms or industrial platforms, this is the over, and we have several issues related to amendments, and that will give us the directions of simplifying administration. We can move to that issue, and then maybe 2 or 3 questions you can ask. Thank you. I just would like to announce those changes and those legislative initiatives that we died in the Parliament on May 12. The possible on changes to tax code of Ukraine on military fee. That law cancelled taxation of 1.5% of income with currency. Then the next legislation initiative. Introduction of registrators of RIRO cash machines, and the law is signed, and after this published it will get into force. Payers of the same tax up to 1 million hryvnia, they don't need to use cash machines. So there was a compromise found between business, government, and representatives of the parliament, and that is welcomed by IMF because cash discipline and that was our requirement with IMF. 2173A, finally, there is a decision. It's balanced, and a test was not prolonged. An e-system of registration of PDV, like it was since July 1st, it's working, but in this draft law, it considers those expected developments of business that improve the system. For me, as a lot of bookkeepers wrote to me, this is great that we reduced the number of compulsory requisites of information on that check evidence, because as soon as you, if the address is wrong, you make a mistake, then local tax inspectors took that from your tax loan, and I received a lot of feedback on that issue. Also, 2173A, that is a draft law, was developed in the committee of the parliament, and Mrs. Yuzhanina and the representatives of business, they provided their proposals. They are considered in that draft law. Very soon, I hope that it will be signed and published, and bookkeepers will feel simplification, and there will be some corrections, and which with formula, etc. We are trying to do everything possible for software for electronic administration of PDV was friendly. If a bookkeeper enjoys that they use that program, that we can say that there is a victory. On July 15, 2015, they passed the law on the transport price formation. The threshold for controlled and from 1 million to 5 million with one country agent and with income from 20 to 50 million. Criteria is improved. It says that the general rate on income in the country will influence which country, if the country is on the list or not, and also there's no criteria about open information about legal entities. So we reduce fines from 5 to 1%, and also there's a limit for fines 300 minimal salaries, and all requests of business which we heard in committees and all the letters that we received from business from organizations, and they were heard and taken into consideration on transferred price bill. Then the law of Ukraine on changes to tax code and to reduce tax pressure on taxpayers. There are a lot of amendments and tax information decision will be if those who check agree, business complaint that complaint as the result of they have additional payment and they start criminal cases, and the law provides information to provide information after the head of fiscal body agrees with the document, and also the precondition of act which is cancelled in courts, and prohibition to have when a part of criminal code, and it will be cancelled, and taxpayers will be able to correct a mistake and tax documents without paying a fine during 90 days, and all the rest of the changes. I hope that the draft will be signed in the Ministry of Finances. There were some comments to this draft law, but in general we supported it. I want to say that on July 15, we ratified the Convention of double taxation of the island to prevent that, and we hope that that will become next steps for the development of our economic relations with that country. In the Parliament, also they registered the draft law on reducing the rent for gas and oil production. There will be a new. We are waiting for expected to have investments for next year, and very good news. Finally, because about this issue I knew about when I was working in business, and I know how it is painful for the companies with seller tax, and since at the decree of the Ministry of Finances and now 651, but I just had a budget classification says that the tax for input and it will be done according to one and the same classification code. Earlier, I represented on the Ministry of Revenues, and we're trying to get as much as possible of all payments to regulate the fiscal problems and to do the plan. That's why they created different budget classification codes. Those is one tax and for income, regular, or when we paid dividends, that's the only tax, but they created artificially different codes for classification, and they paid for different accounts, and as a result, a lot of enterprises they didn't see in the accounts and the state fiscal service those overpayments from the income tax, and if they were not on the card or the tax plan, that those sums could not be calculated, including a lot of complaints we received in court suits from companies, and finally this issue is resolved, and we made the first step to return from the beginning of a return of those overpayments for income tax. Very soon, companies that face that problem will be able to see on their cards, special cards for taxpayers, all overpayments that took place in for income tax. So we bring together codes of budget of classification and also the account to pay income tax, and companies will be able to use those payment. Thank you very much to companies for understanding, because at present overpayment of income tax reaches 20 billion hryvnia. It's clear the budget cannot return such a sum in a day, but we made the first step. It's a fair step, every taxpayer to see at least those sums they all paid to the budget, and then to use that during when they calculate the tax. And I congratulate you with that decision. I would like to thank the Minister of Finances and all the group that was working on this, and I would like to thank the head of the office of Igor Pretsev, because he had meetings with companies and explained, educated them, and we worked more than 4 months on this issue, because there are some losses for the budget, and we understand. We went to that to return back the justice, and in the end there will be no overpayments, and PD will be paid back automatically. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your review, which shows plenty of technical issues to be resolved in the area of taxation, and it's not just about formulas, it's about many rules, also at the level of legislation and bylaws. The more technical the problem is, the harder it may be to resolve it, and it may require thorough job and thorough work. We still have a couple of questions pending, and I think we have questions from the Chamber of Commerce. Just once more time, there is enterprises have an extra tax payment, need not to do advance tax payments. I want to correct you, we didn't change taxation rules. We didn't renounce advance payment, but we state that calculations of taxes due should consider tax and profit subject to payment. We may not say that all 28 billion hryvnias have not been reflected on personal taxpayer accounts. The thing is that when paying dividends, a company had to pay advance profit tax, and it was subject to be done under separate budget classification, which was not reflected in company's taxpayers card. Taxpayers themselves did not know that, and they only had access to information whenever they received some administrative order from the tax authority about unpaid tax fees, so that they would go to the taxation office to find their cards reflected no such payments. I mean that now we have electronic database where everything is shown. That is, advance tax payment on dividends will be included, and they will be properly accounted for. Yeah, because it is a single task and a single code of budget classification. And could you also share your successes with the Skipper protocol? Thank you. We have detailed information about the progress of our negotiations with Cyprus. We particularly mean here taxation of real estate owned by a non-resident Cyprus company, as well as royalties and accrual of interests. You can have this information on our Ministry of Finance website. The protocol was signed. It has to be approved by national parliaments, According to the existing agreement, we cannot change the convention with Cyprus we have now. According to terms and conditions, it may be only possible to do it 5 years after the ratification, so you may not expect quick changes only in 5 years. But really welcome this progress, because negotiations were rather tough, and the government of Cyprus has understood how important the matter is for us, as it is also for them. If Cyprus pretends to be a reliable and transparent business hub, some comparable conditions with different countries should be established. On the level of Ukraine, we need to review the existing convention to see that it fits OSCE's model convention. And despite Ukraine is not a member of this organization, the government of Ukraine has committed several years ago to stick to OECD recommendation, and now we are designing a strategy of reviewing our system of taxation with other countries. Profit tax specification. If I have extra tax payment, 5 million hryvnias to 10 million hryvnia tax due, I can recalculate it and reduce it. And yes, you can. You should do it like this. Because of that, the ideas of introducing KPIs for better tax collection included the need to avoid tax havens and tax black boxes at the level of customs, trafficking, illegal alcohol production, and I only welcome practical position of the head of the State Fiscal Service and his deputies in this. We expect to cover the red line in tax collection owing to this fight against tax havens and tax black boxes. And a system of VAT administration is also an important tool of fighting against shadow business practices. Astelit company, operator, mobile life operator. First of all, I'd like to thank you heartfelt for your efforts, working for many years at high managerial positions. We cannot but praise your input, which may not be underestimated. And secondly, a comment, practical comment. I've thoroughly checked your presentation. It's a nice presentation, and it really characterizes changes of our government's vision of foreign companies. Before, foreign company representatives would meet with the government officials in a non-systemic way, no presentations, no vision, no strategy of negotiation and cooperation. And judging from your presentation, I can see positives and only some pitfalls. And I'd like to express my suggestions also in respect of telecommunication industry-based industrial platform. Please attract attention of the government to certain discrepancies in the declaration of stated principles and objectives of international level, I mean in this fiscal reform, and some real steps taken in this direction. Say, we speak of the need for Ukraine to attract investors, but in parallel, a draft legislation on imports tax on all imports investments included. And this piece of legislation has been adopted. It includes equipment necessary for business development. I do remember times when even for VAT there was a norm when resale operation were subject to VAT. Even for own construction for corporate business development, I think this is a gap. Because on one side we declare our care after the country and the people, but back in December the government takes its ridiculous decision. We have exceptionally high tax rate for individuals, and still the government considers ideas of increasing these levels further. Our norms on, say, income tax are not materially different from those in the EU. The single social contribution is also at par, more or less. But when we check for the tax-free minimum, we'll see a huge discrepancy. In European countries, the non-taxable minimum is at the level of the minimum wage level, not this non-taxable minimum. We had this fantastic 1,200 hryvnias non-taxable minimum with 0.5% income tax imposed by the government in December. Imagine someone having to live out on 1,000 hryvnias a month, and this norm of 0.5% income tax is ridiculous. So just please do not lose the focus of your stated objectives and your performance. And my last remark, coming back to European legislation, your words come to mind that we may not imbalance our budget. But okay, we do not want to lose the budget balance, but you easily impose 600 hryvnias income tax on individuals. Same situation can be seen in business sector. Maybe we should check for other sources of fiscal revenues. Thank you. I know this information. We know of customs taxes. We know about the problem with it, and it will be cancelled effective from the next year. As for own equipment purchased by companies, a lot has been said of it at the platform on light industry, and we spoke about equipment to be included in the authorized fund of the company. We included this consideration. As regards non-taxable minimum, I also do not understand the situation. I think it really should be increased to match the minimum wage. But again, thanks for your nice comments. I'd like to amend here that the December decisions were not related to this. They were partially related to the tax reform, but many things were related to individual ad hoc matters related to situation with public finances. I'd like to thank Olena for treating us to effectively 2 briefings, including latest changes in the tax legislation. And I'd like to remind you that we have a comprehensive reform also in the taxation sphere that is coming to this country, and this is done in a very democratic way, and this is a sure sign of the transparent approach. The Ukrainian Media Center of Reforms, may I remind you, is always a two-way communication tool, and it always provides platform for debates, also involving the media. Thank you. Please come to us again.